Very nice to be with all of you again. We're so happy to be invited back, and we'll be joining you at the last Sunday in December, is my understanding as well. I also want to thank the younger people who've joined today for lowering the average age and raising the average IQ. We do appreciate that tremendously. Now, from time to time, I work in the chemical dependency field with groups of patients, and from time to time I'll do an introduction exercise when we have a new group, and I'll ask folks to tell us if you're a dog person or a cat person. The dog people in the room, would you like to do this exercise with me?
Yes.
The dog people in the room could indicate so by just giving a nice woof right now. Go ahead. Oh, I got some dog people here. Now, if you're a cat person, I think you know the right cat noise to make, although it differs from culture to culture. But in English, we say what?
Meow.
Now, was that all cat people who said that, or just demonstrating? If you're a cat person, say meow. Okay. Wow. That's our cat sometimes. It's not a cool cat, that's a wound-up kitty.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Meow, wow.
Now,
You're both?
there you go. Who's both in this room? We got some boths in this room, okay.
All dogs queers.
Now, this past summer, speaking of amazing marvels of nature, we got to watch once again dragonflies soaring throughout the sky. And in fact, I don't know how late you've seen one, but I saw one 9 days ago on November 2nd, hovered right in front of me. Who can say, really, which is a more amazing flyer, though? The dragonflies we only see in the summer, or the hummingbirds that at our house we see year-round? Did you put that feeder out this morning, huh? Hey, I was supposed to remind her to do that. I forgot. Any inventory of amazing natural creatures would be incomplete if we didn't mention the orcas that we get to see, and hopefully we'll get to see for longer if we can sustain our habitat. What do all these appealing creatures of God have in common, aside from the joy we take in them? Well, they're all predators. Each one of them is an example of nature red in tooth and claw, these creatures that we take such joy in. There's a little torque in that, isn't there? A little tension. Because we too, in many ways, are predators and are wired for conflict. It's with this background in our biologies that we come to today's topic, and really to our lifelong challenge, how to be of peace when at times many, if not every, fiber of our beings becomes invested in an aggressive response to the world's stimulus. For do we not, generally speaking, love to watch the Seahawks?
Yes.
Or the Huskies at this time of year? And what is football if not a symbolic and perhaps slightly less injurious form of combat? We're wired for conflict, while our mission is peace. Is it mission impossible? Maybe not, but it is a test. Our world has been tested again and again. Today, of course, as has been mentioned, commemorates the conclusion of one of the terrible tests of all time, as we mark the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended what was then called the Great War, or the war to end all wars. That didn't work out, did it? The armistice actually was at 11 a.m., 11 at the hour of the 11th month, on the 11th day of the 11th month, the 11th hour, 11 a.m. Paris time. That was 2 a.m. our time. I don't know how many of you got up to commemorate that, but 2 a.m. I think I was up helping our cat get into the kitty litter box or something. That was a great test for all of humanity. But we all have our stories of these tests, whether on the global or personal level. Whenever I write a talk, I find myself facing exam after exam on its subject. You start thinking about an area of focus or something you need to work on, and it just manifests in your environment. I get to watch how I perform in these pop-up pop quizzes, and I have to confess I don't get straight A's. Case in point, the feta cheese that I bought for our dinner party didn't taste right. Sally said, "This is bitter. Why don't you take it back for a refund? We'll have the pasta salad without it." So I walked into QFC that Monday to find there was no one at customer service. Right there, I'm already getting wound up. There was a clerk a few feet away who ignored me when I asked for help. She's walking away without answering, I said to myself. I did not, at that moment, consider with compassion the plight of her position, or the notion that she might be heading for a break, or that she might be deaf, or maybe her sister was in the ER. After all, I had no idea what she was really supposed to be doing, or even if she'd heard me at all. Instead, I had thoughts like this: what am I, chopped tofu? My blood pressure was rising. I think my face was turning the color of the shirt I'm wearing right now, when the actual customer service person came over. "Good morning," I said. "I tried to get your colleague's attention, but she just walked away from me." Somehow this did not inspire a deeper discourse. Two wise beings reflecting on the folly of our existential dilemma in an otherwise impersonal and commercial universe. Yes, customer service gal, as I saw her in those moments, was a little short in the departments of A, being friendly, B, making conversation, C, making eye contact, and D, trying to be helpful. This is all my judgment, as you understand. My attempts to engage this struggling soul in any way that could be described as other than robotic fell flat. So business transacted, that's the right way to say it. It's not my mother tongue. I left the store and moved forward on my day's agenda, which was to go to my job and be helpful to my clients. But as I was heading toward that great, professional, personal, spiritual opportunity, I found that I carried in a tiny way the seeds of war in my heart. I was offended. I was angry. I was ready to fight over a cheese transaction. Then I thought about this topic and what it would be like to have peace talks with this stranger and that friend. The root of war is how we live our daily lives, says Thich Nhat Hanh. Surely it's also true, or could be true, or really it must be true, that the way we live moment by moment and day by day contains the roots of peace. Pope Francis said that the root of peace is simply this: the ability to listen. Could we just listen to one another, we fellow travelers on this journey from unknown to unknown? Could we take the time to engage together in something other than just a busy, business-like way in the moments that make up our lives? Could we see our fellows as people and not obstacles, objects, speed bumps? Our unity principles tell us that people are good. People are good. We're not stained by original sin. We're not invariably and unfailingly incorrigible and doomed to eternal damnation by reason of our concupiscent natures. Concupiscent, think of concubine. It's related to that word. It has to do with that area of human activity. There are faiths who believe this, of course, that we are damned. My sister Karen, a Southern Baptist, has let me know that she is very concerned about where I will spend eternity. While my concerns are more about how I will fund retirement. I feel eternity will take care of itself. Eternity has already begun, I say. Let's try to make it as heavenly as possible. And let's help each other with that. Now, Karen is able to make light of her own faith, I found out. And she sent me the following joke. This is the one about the person who dies and is being shown heaven by St. Peter. Every faith has its own area. You know, and the Buddhists are over here chanting Om Mane Padme Hum. And the Catholics are over here singing in Latin with the censers swinging and the incense burning. And the Lutherans are in this hall, you know, singing, "A mighty fortress is our God." And then St. Peter says, now, to get this to this next area, we really have to tiptoe and be very quiet. It's the Southern Baptists over here, and they think they're here all alone. We were able, my sister and I, to make peace when we listened to each other. I told her that when she declares to me, I can be saved only by Jesus Christ, a la Southern Baptist doctrine, well, that really kind of chaps my hide. So pray for me all you want, sister. I know I need help, but please do spare me the preaching. And she said, okay, enjoy what you believe, and I'll do the same. And we established peace. We had a kind of personal armistice. Unity also tells us that our thoughts create our experiences. When I get worked up over the grocery clerk, or the person who cuts in the ferry line, no personal identification with that out here, is there? When I get my knickers in a twist over some other person or situation, it is my thinking that is twisted. The clerk, the line cutter, the politician, the significant other,
Wait a minute.
the insignificant other. All are souls just like you and me trying to figure it out. And we are all creating our life experience through how we think. We are co-creators with God, creating reality through our thoughts. As I tell my clients, you're either working on your recovery or you're working on your relapse. Or as Russell Brand puts it, any Russell Brand fans out here? Yeah. As Russell Brand puts it, you're either working a conscious program or an unconscious program is working you. You might say we're either working toward peace in our hearts and minds and in this world, or we are working toward conflict. I want to tell you another story of working from conflict back toward peace. This comes from the Alcoholics Anonymous tradition, a wonderful speaker. And I'm not here proselytizing for AA, it's just there's great wisdom in what this guy had to say. The man's name is Charlie, and he tells a story of when he was sometime into his recovery, his life was really coming together. As he put it, I have a job, I have a car that actually runs, surprise, surprise. I've been sober for about 6 years and I'm spiritual. I mean, I'm really spiritual. Every morning I get on my knees and I say the 6th and 7th step prayers. But I still get as angry and as frustrated with people as ever. Now, I want to share with you exactly what these prayers are that he's talking about so you have the framework. The 6th step in AA talks about being entirely ready to have God give us a makeover. Remove our defects of character. You know, our selfishness, our judgments, our addiction to fudge or Netflix, that kind of stuff. And the prayer that goes with it says this: God, help me become willing to let go of all the things to which I still cling. Help me to be ready to let you remove all these defects, that your will and your purpose may take their place. It's a step of willingness. Then there's a 7th step prayer, and he says both these prayers every morning. And the 7th step says, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So this is what the process is that Charlie's working through by praying every morning. But he's telling his sponsor, so I am saying those prayers, but then when I get out on the Ventura freeway, I immediately become incensed at the way people are driving. And you know, I want to be humble, but I don't want to be humble by myself. I see all this bad driving and the way other drivers cut people off, and it's inconsiderate, and it's unsafe, and it's not fair. And I just want to have a missile launcher on the roof of my car. And I'm a million miles away from those prayers, and I want to wreak vengeance on all these drivers. So Charlie tells us he's talking to his sponsor, Bill, and Bill asks, let me get this straight. You say these prayers just aren't working for you. Yeah. And you say the prayers every morning? Yeah, every morning. And you're also saying the prayers every night? Absolutely, I say them every night. And Bill says, I'll tell you what. How about when you're on the freeway, where there are all these bad drivers? What if you said the prayers then? And Charlie says, I hate that. But I begin to say the prayers through my clenched teeth, even though I don't want to. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character. And little by little, my grip on the steering wheel loosens. And some spirituality that's beyond me begins to grow and inhabit my actual life, not just my prayer life. Peace is what happens right now, in this moment, and this one, and this one. Peace talks involve all the discourse between us, not just at some formal conference table, but in each simple, casual moment when we can set aside our judgments, our condemnations, and you know we have them, right? We're all evaluating our environment, trying to figure things out, and so we make judgments, kind of an evolutionary tool. But we can set aside our opinions and our preferences and just listen to each other, because we're either building toward peace or we're building toward conflict. I think about how Jesus approached people with compassion, and he saw into others' hearts. When he met people, he wasn't on some big trip about, well, they're not helping me with my cheese transaction. Or they're not moving their camel out of my way fast enough. Instead, it says in the 9th chapter of Matthew, Jesus went around visiting all the towns and villages. He taught and healed people with every kind of disease and sickness. As he saw the crowds, his heart filled with pity for them because they were worried and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus saw into this experience that people were having. He looked with the eye of compassion, and instead of taking offense, he took pity. For he saw how worried and unable to help themselves people were. The clerks in the QFC, could it be that each of them had some degree of worry? Could it be that one or both of them felt helpless in some way, like being stuck in a job you don't love, or in some other part of their lives? I don't know what is true for them, actually. But couldn't I have had that pity? Incidentally, the word pity, which sounds like, don't pity me, I don't want your pity, right? The word pity, though, in its origin, stems from the same root as piety. And that word at root means duty. It is our duty and our obligation to one another to regard each other with compassion and with love, to make our talks with each other peace talks. Peace talks involve also our inner dialogues with ourselves. How do we speak to ourselves? In a peaceful way? Or do we say, by the way, I was just playing table tennis yesterday. I play with a lot of people who are better than me. And even though they're better than me, that's clearly not their gold standard, because a lot of them, when they make a bad shot, they say, Louie, you're supposed to, and they kind of talk to themselves in a very demeaning way. And I'm not going to tell you if I do that or not, but I do. So they also involve how we dialogue with ourselves. As a final look at peace, I want to discuss inner peace, no longer being at war within ourselves. So I'll now share with you a story that involves perhaps the ultimate kind of inner war and a resolution to peace that's actually touched the whole world. Jill Jackson was a remarkable woman, beautiful both inside and out, but she was deeply troubled. Her mother had died when she was 3. Her father remarried, but her stepmother rejected her, and at 9 she was put in foster care. Can you imagine? Mom dies at 3, and then you're in foster care because your stepmom kind of says, I don't want to deal with you. Jill was blessed with beauty, though, and talent, and had an ambition to become an actress, and that led her to drop out of school and move to Hollywood, where she found work as an actress within the studio system. She was that gifted and lovely, and she starred in several westerns. This was a long time ago. None of us have ever seen them, I don't think. She married a man she met in the world of films. She retired from the movies at his request, and they started a family. By 1944, her childhood demons were beginning to trouble her more and more. Divorcing from her husband, she was beset with inner turmoil. And she became so overwhelmed in that year of global war that Jill Jackson's war within herself led her at that time to attempt to take her own life. In this grim goal, Jill did not succeed. Her life went on. I wonder, when I talk about these kinds of issues each time and place, if there are not folks in the very room I'm in who know the kind of inner struggle Jill Jackson went through. I think there are always people in these rooms that have struggled with those kinds of issues. They are not distant from us. I'm thankful to be here today in the face of having some struggles with these kinds of issues myself. Yet my gratitude is probably just a dim reflection of Jill Jackson's experience. For she spoke these words in a later interview. She said, "When I attempted suicide and I didn't succeed, I knew for the first time unconditional love, which God is. You are totally loved, totally accepted, just the way you are. In that moment when I was not allowed to die, something happened to me which is very difficult to explain. I had an eternal moment of truth in which I knew I was loved, and I knew I was here for a purpose." Jill Jackson went on with that sense of purpose to rebuild her life. The new building blocks included a second marriage to a Hollywood composer, Cy Miller, and together they began to write songs. Cy the music and Jill the words. You are certainly familiar with at least one of her lyrics, for it starts like this. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Now, as that radio commentator years ago used to say, now you know the rest of the story. Jill Jackson's early troubles and inner pain led her finally to a place of peace and connection with God. And that pathway led her with her husband to create something which touches millions of people, certainly each week, probably every day. Just so it can be in our lives. No matter what pathways have led us here, and no matter what dark valleys we have stumbled through, we can emerge into the sunlit uplands of peace, both inner and outer, when we listen deep inside to the voice of Spirit, and when we listen to each other, with not just our minds and our ears, but with our hearts. We are loved, and we are here for a purpose. So let the peace talks begin.